Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's public budget hearing. Tonight's hearing, we will present and review the 2024 fiscal year budget for the town of New London. This budget is a culmination of many months of work, dozens of meetings. It involved efforts of department heads, town administration and staff, a lot of public input and review by the selectmen, and finally the budget committee. And I'd like to thank everyone for all their hard work in preparing the budget, especially Lynn Lewis, our finance officer, who's cleared up a lot of questions before we even started tonight's meeting. We appreciate it. Thanks. Most of the budget that we'll present tonight has already gone through a vote by this committee. We've taken each department, we've taken line items, and we voted on those. However, there are a handful of new items, a petitioned warrant article, another $50,000 expense that will have to go through the formality of a vote for those new items, and then eventually approve the whole budget. We will entertain questions as the night goes on from the public, and we will do our best to provide more explanation and more detail if you need it. I had made a note here to ask Lynn and my fellow committee members to keep an eye on some of these things that were hanging out there, but Lynn and I think, just cleared up most of them. So I think our numbers will not jive with your packets that you picked up earlier today. The white packets still need to be adjusted. We're going to hang our hats on the yellow worksheet that you should all have. That's the most up-to-date budget summary, and I'll follow that closely along with the agenda. Who doesn't? All right, so before we get started, let's ensure that every budget member has the yellow sheet. Should be in the packet that was handed out. If you,
I don't have a yellow sheet. Yes,
if it's,
I do.
okay. All right, so we'll review them, make sure we can put the most accurate numbers in front of the voters that we can. So I'd now like to officially open the public budget hearing and start with asking Kim Hallquist, our town administrator, to give us an overview of the budget.
Great. Thanks, Joe. And I would echo Joe's comments about thanking everybody for this process. It really is a team effort with staff and budget committee members and selectmen and members of the public that come to the meeting. So it's quite an undertaking when you look at the budget. Budget sheets have more than 450 individual items that the selectmen and the budget committee look at and consider each and every one. So it's quite a bit of work. It's a lot of money. It's quite a bit of work, but it's obviously worth the time to make sure that the taxpayers' funds are well spent. So I thank everybody for their cooperation on the process. So the work we are here tonight to discuss is really the foundation for town meeting that will be held on Wednesday, March 14th. That's when we will consider, or voters will consider, this budget. Here in New London, we split town meeting into 2 days. We have town meeting starts on Tuesday, and that's for the election of officers and the voting on zoning amendments. And then the meeting is recessed and we meet on Wednesday. That's when these items that we're discussing tonight, which involve appropriations, and there'll be some other articles that you'll consider that are not appropriations, but obviously very important to the running of the town. This year we had 2 petitions for this process. One petition you'll act on Tuesday, that's a zoning petition. And then the second one is the one Joe mentioned that we'll be discussing tonight, and that's to purchase the Bewley property. So I think it's important to note that the citizens have the right to petition, and they did so for 2 separate things this year. So I think that's good. It shows that the citizenry is engaged in their understanding what's going on. So I think that's a good thing. So this hearing tonight, as Joe has pointed out, is to discuss the budget that the Budget Committee is recommending to town meeting. Once it gets to town meeting, It's the town meeting's budget, and voters there will make decisions based on the recommendations that the Budget Committee has put forward. You will have a budget which is up, the operating budget, 8.7%. It is increased over last year. I think this is like the same amount that Social Security has gone up, and I think reflects the increases in expenses for everything that we're dealing with, the things that the town buys, the expenses for employees are in that 8.7%. This is the same as, the increase is larger than last year, but I think still reflects the continuing increase in costs. Of the $11.9 million budget that will be discussed tonight, the operating budget represents 8.4%. That's about 71% of the budget. The operating budget includes funding to run all of the departments, the boards and committees, town insurance, legal fees, payment of town debt, payments to the various community organizations that perform a myriad of services to the community. Basically, the operating budget covers the town's bills that are paid every 2 weeks by Lynn and allows the town to operate. So that's why it's called the operating budget. To address this 8.7% increase, the Selectmen and Budget Committee reduced payments to the capital reserve accounts by 51%. The capital reserve funds are the town's savings accounts, and reducing the payments will not impact the services provided to citizens during the budget year. In other words, this is money that would have gone into the town savings accounts. When the reductions to the capital reserves are factored in, the increase in spending that will impact the tax rate is 2.1%. While I understand that many would prefer a zero increase, or even better yet, a reduction, I hope we all can agree that 2.1% is reasonable given the state of the economy and rising prices. And I think it reflects the effort by both the Selectmen and the Budget Committee to keep the increase as low as they possibly could. So now I'll just review some of the highlights on this budget. There'll be 3 bond issues presented at town meeting. They will all require a 3/5 vote to pass. One of the bond issues will be an additional $275,000 for repairs to Whipple Hall. This will be added to the $600,000 that was approved last year. Second one is the Public Works Department submitted an application for replacement of wastewater generators, that's the sewer, through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. This program has a 25% loan forgiveness. These generators have been identified in the sewer asset management plan as needing replacement. The town's application scored second out of 107 applications. So there'll be a warrant article for this $300,000 program to allow the town to accept the loan and accept the 25% forgiveness. If the loan is awarded, the first payment will be in 2025, so there is no payment included in this budget. And I think that the grant or the loan that Bob Harrington applied for, we also had, you've already heard about the grants that were awarded for the police department. The fire department has also gotten grants. I think it goes to show that the department heads are really trying as much as they can to get grants to help the taxpayer by getting these monies in that do not have to be asked for the taxpayers. I also point to Conservation Committee. They've been prolific in getting donations for their project, the Crescenti Bog project. The Energy Committee has 2 grant applications in for some work, and the the Waste Reduction Committee is also applying. So I think it goes to show that there is an effort by the department heads and boards and committees to apply for as many grants as they can to keep the budget request as low as possible. The third bond article will be for the purchase of the Bewley property. That is a $375,000 bond that was submitted by petition of voters. The selectmen met earlier tonight, and they voted 2 in favor of recommending the article and 1 opposed. I'll also point out that the selectmen and budget committee are required to recommend or not recommend all warrant articles that have an appropriation. So that is something that the Budget Committee will be doing on the 2 articles that remain that they have not yet acted upon. So when you see the town report soon, you'll see the recommended or not, and that's to give voters a little bit of information as to where their Budget Committee and their selectmen stand. Okay, so the budget will include the payments of the bond where applicable for the principal and interest payments, so that is in the budget already. Revenues, I'll just say a word about revenues. The budget includes an estimate of revenues. This estimate will be revised in October when the selectmen speak with the DRA about the tax rate. We do the best we can to guess what the revenues are that will be coming in. I would say that we are conservative with our estimates so that we don't make it appear that the tax rate will be lower than it really will be. So we try to be as conservative and fair as we can. The revenues are close to what they are last year. I think they're more than $100,000 down, and that's the result of a lower payment by the state of New Hampshire for rooms and meals tax. The money they share with the town is going to be a bit lower, about $100,000 lower. Our biggest revenue continues to be Will Kidder's collection of all the motor vehicle fees that you all register your cars, so that is a huge revenue for the town. It's the second only after property taxes, so that's over $1 million. So I always encourage people to buy new cars, expensive cars. That really helps keep the tax rate down because it goes right to the general fund. At this point of the presentation, I often talk about what the tax rate will be. I think this year it's not really worth talking about because we will be doing a statistical update of property values. You've probably heard that we're at about 62.5% of value. So it wouldn't be fair to try and estimate what the tax rate would be because we have no idea what the value of your property will be to apply against it. So what I would say to people is the operating budget is up 2.1%. So the town will likely spend more money if this is all voted in. What your property value will be once this, once the equalized value, or once the value of the town goes as close to 100% as we can, I can't really say. So I don't think it's fair to say it's going to be under whatever dollar amount, because that won't really help. If you looked at your tax bill, your value, and apply a tax rate that I might say tonight, it wouldn't be fair because you don't have the right value. So suffice to say, at least the operating budget is up 2.1%, and leave it at that. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah?
I do. Thank you for that breakdown. Just for complete transparency for, our voters, what portion of the operating budget, or just an overall collection, what's the dollar amount or percentage that goes to the school system and then also the county? Because I know we're looking at what's left, so I think it's important that people realize where the majority and bulk of their tax dollars are going.
Do we have that list here? Hold on a sec.
In a good way.
That's what you like, Kim?
Yeah, she's got it. This one, right? Yep.
Put this under things I meant to email you, by the way. Sorry.
And just give the amounts, yeah.
Okay, so for 2022, the town was 480, county was 259, local school was 709, state school was 138, water precinct was 122. I'm sorry, I don't have percentages.
No, that's okay. I was thinking more in terms of the millions, though, that, like our operating budget, or overall, the total figure that you collect for taxes for the town of New London. And then what percentage is distributed to the Kearsarge School District, and then what is, if I'm missing an entity, but then what's given to the state and then the county.
I don't have that readily available. That I would have to look at the warrant.
That's all right. I just want people to understand that, you know, we're dealing with a pretty small portion of the pie and being very judicious in how we go through the process of budgeting, but we're probably the smallest percentage that is left over?
No, the county's smaller, but.
Okay,
I mean,
county.
I think your point is that the school gets,
And I don't have a problem
large
with that, I
amount.
just want everybody to understand, again, on a transparent basis, how much of your tax dollar, and if I asked a couple of years ago, and I believe it was 54% of all collected goes to the school district. And then that's an important thing, and I'm only saying this, and I'll get off my soapbox, so that maybe more people will attend and pay more attention to how those funds are spent there, rather than nitpick how much copy paper, you know, some of our administrators are going through here, because they're very judicious in their spending, believe me, and then we just kind of send it off. And I'm on the budget committee for the school board as well. They won't like me very much after this statement, but I just want to make sure, you know, we're clear on that, and we're very transparent to the general public, because I think it gets lost in the shuffle. So, when you have those numbers, I would love them.
Yeah, I can look into that and
Okay.
email you with those.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions for Kim from the overview? Peter, come on up to the mic, and everyone, when you come to the mic, two things. I always forget, I'm supposed to press a button, make sure the green comes on, and then state your name because you're being recorded.
Am I on? Yep.
You're on.
Peter Bianchi. I'm concerned about the transfer to capital reserves. If I understand this correctly, last year we appropriated $967,000 for capital reserves. This year, we've cut that in half. Somewhere, something's being left out. For that decrease in appropriations for capital reserve is going to have to be made up. We're just kicking the can down the road. So to say that the operating budget is really only 2.1%, I don't think is really an accurate explanation about how much money the town is going to raise and spend for operating the town without cutting that one line item, according to the sheet, by 51.3%. So I'm concerned that that money is going to have to be made up. So if you don't do it this year, next year, if they have the same thing, I suppose we could take no money and put it into the capital reserve, and that would make a decrease in our total budget. But that's not forward thinking, and that's not, I don't think, smart financing to kick this can down the road for the things that were apparently thought of to put into the capital reserve. Thank you.
You are correct, Peter. It was a proposal made by the selectmen that the Budget Committee agreed with, that in light of tough economic times, that there were not a lot of places. As Lindsay said, we're not in the business of counting paper clips and reams of paper. The lion's share of our budget is payroll. And we felt none of us had an appetite to decrease any of those areas for any of our employees in this town. So the only area we could find something is in the reserves. And yes, will it kick the can down the road? I would say if we did it for 1 year, which we're doing, I think we'll get by. And I think it would be prudent to make sure we're back on schedule. It may mean pushing the purchase of a dump truck out instead of 20 years to 21 years until we get the catch-up. But yes, it was a method we employed to handle the rising cost of everything else that's going on in an inflationary period. Other questions before we get into anything? Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Bob Lyon. I missed it last year. I'm curious about, this is Whipple Hall, right? We're in Whipple Hall. $275,000 in addition to $600,000 last year for repairs to this building. Can you just give me a rundown of what actually is being done? Because it looks pretty good from where I'm sitting.
Thank you. And he's still here. He may not appreciate that I'm going to call on Phil Sherman to maybe give me a little bit better insight, give us all a little bit better insight on why we're completing the project. We've started a project. There were cost overruns, as we've seen with everything, and Phil can probably speak to that better than anyone else.
How do you say you owe me one in Latin? So this increase is a very small amount of what we refer to as scope creep. More things we want to do that we didn't plan on a year ago, but most all of it is just plain old inflation. We started out in 2019 when these numbers were originally estimated. The committee last year, prior to the town meeting, escalated those using percentages, quite honestly to the point that we were embarrassed. We thought we had just packed so much in there that if anybody questioned us on it, it would be hard to defend. We didn't escalate it enough, nor did anybody else see the inflation coming that's come, and it's particularly hit the construction industry. So that's the majority of it. The part where the scope has crept are these, they refer to them as cabinet heaters, but these 6 units along the walls. One of the primary goals of this project is to fix the acoustics in this room. And screaming louder on the playground doesn't fix the acoustics, and those make a lot of noise. So $25,000 of that $275,000 is to replace these with a unit that doesn't make noise. Does that answer your question?
So I guess my question was, what's been done? It looks like we either spent or going to spend $900,000. So like, is this all work been done? This is all new. I'm fairly new to town, so I don't know what it looked like before.
What's been done to date is the AV system and the wall panels, the acoustic panels on the walls. The money that's left will go into additional acoustic panels on the ceiling, improve lighting, primarily to assist with voting, where they've had a lot of trouble being able to see things, sprinklers in the attic and in this room, and probably in the Bucher attic, refinishing floors, some painting, that kind of stuff, some minor exterior work. There's some tile work that fix roof leaks and things like that. Did I get most of that? And tables and chairs.
And what is the Bucher building?
Bucher is the PD side of this, plus the lobby that you came in through.
And there's work going on over there as well?
The only work that's going on there is sprinklers for the attic.
So that large part of that $900,000 is for Whipple?
Yeah, this is primarily a Whipple project, and it's primarily this room that we're trying to, the goal of this project originally was to bring this room into the 21st century so that it can be used in an amenable manner for meetings like this.
Phil, also the air conditioning.
I'm sorry, how could I forget?
I know.
Yes, Bill's favorite topic. Yeah, about $100,000 of this, of the base budget and the escalation goes into providing a fresh air system and air conditioning.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
Lynn?
Janet Kidder gave me the paperwork I needed to do those calculations for Lindsay. So the total tax burden for 2022 was $20 million. Municipal was $6.2 million of that, which is 30%. County was $3.3 million, that was 16%. Local education was 9.1, which is 45%. and state education was 1.7. Did you tell me to hold on, like slow down? I'm sorry. Okay. You watch it on YouTube. 1.7, which is 9%. So it's 70% is money that we don't work on in budget committee. 70% of the tax burden.
It's not necessarily worked on, it's just, that's what I want to make sure we're
Right.
very transparent to everyone that, we're dealing with 30% and attention might be needed to be paid elsewhere on the other percentages.
Thank you, Janet, for getting that. Appreciate it. Any other questions before we move on? Phyllis? Phyllis, can you just hit that button to go green?
Did I press it? That's
Perfect.
You got it, okay. Phyllis Pietro. First of all, I want to say for the first time in 15 years, I agree with Peter Bianchi about something. This committee and the select board have a fabulous record of kicking the can down the road. Pretty soon that can's going to be sunk in the bottom of Lake Sunapee, because it certainly is not the money that is needed for capital investments and so on is really not being spent. It doesn't make sense not to put money in the savings bank every year and to cut that account. And I would like it to be on the record that I think this is a penny wise and pound foolish action on the part of the Budget Committee and no doubt the Select Board not to put the same amount of money regularly as needed in the Capital Reserve Fund. My second comment actually is not going to cost any money at all, or very little, but I think it's quite important. And that's a subject I've tried to address when I was on the Budget Committee, when I was told it was none of my business, and subsequently, and that is the question of police training. We do not pay very much money for police training. I would say I want to commend our police chief because I think she's doing an excellent job and she has sent people for training, but I think the concept of police training needs more attention, even though it's a very small part of the budget and sometimes comes out indirectly. Police training in the state of New Hampshire is provided by something called the Council on Standards and Training. Let me quote you. Oops, I hope I have it here. Let me quote you what they say, that institution says on its website. It says it wants police officers to achieve a professional paramilitary appearance. The environment is paramilitary in nature, and you will be subject to military discipline. So the people that we send for all the law enforcement officers in the state of New Hampshire, corrections everywhere, has to go to this place to be provided paramilitary training in a military environment. That means not just the police here that you may encounter, but any New Hampshire policeman that you encounter anywhere on the road, state trooper, corrections officer, anybody in law enforcement has been trained in this paramilitary environment to get military type training. And if you read the website of that organization, you will see it is almost all devoted to physical fitness and military use of arms and weapons and technology and military training. There are courses they have increased. I would say this for the new director there. They have increased courses on de-escalation, racial bias, and so on. The new director, who was appointed the day the pandemic started, is actually trying to improve things somewhat. But it does still not provide adequate training in de-escalation, in racial bias, in communication generally. Chief Cobb was very good and sent someone for training that's run by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, which works down in Concord and does a very good job. They provide training courses in how to deal with people that have mental illness or other communication problems. One person, female officer, went to that training in the past. It seems to me it would be very useful and not expensive for additional officers in the New London Police Department to go for training on how to handle people with mental illness. I would suspect we have more people in New London with mental problems than we do basically hardened criminals or gangs. And so I think that's not going to cost a lot of money, but I think is something that should be emphasized. And I would like to ask whether any member of the Budget Committee or any elected official here has ever been to Concord to visit that council to see what kind of training these people are getting. One, very good, a woman, terrific. I think it might be very useful to go there. Police reform is a major national as well as, I believe, state issue, and it doesn't cost that much more money to check on people and see that it's done well. So that's my speech for today, and I would very much like to recommend that some of you make a trip down there and see if the training, not just for our own policemen, but for any New Hampshire law enforcement official you might meet in the whole course of your career, gets good training in de-escalation, communication, public relations, and so on, because I think that is increasingly important. So I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Phyllis. Appreciate your input, as always, and,
Hey, Joe, can I just pipe
well,
up?
I may suggest that you don't wait another 15 years to get on the same page with Peter. I hope you find some other common ground, some other places. 15 years is a long time.
It is, but she came to see the light, so I think that's great. With regard to Phyllis's comments, I don't know if everybody knows, but Chief Cobb has been appointed to the very council that Phyllis is talking about. The governor appointed her, and executive council confirmed. So I think that the things that Phyllis pointed to will be much benefited by our chief's participation in that program.
Okay. Anything else? I'll move on to a few housekeeping items. I want to make sure I will...
Joe,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Colin.
Kim, part of the package was a page that talked about unassigned fund balance. Are you going to go through that at all, or is that something that you just added for the package for us?
That's just added to the package. We will have, there is one warrant article that you'll be talking about, the $12,000 that the selectmen will be using on assigned fund balance. Otherwise, that's the amount that the selectmen will look at when they go to set the tax rate. So they will use some of that to lower the tax rate.
And is that based on the most recent 2022 audit?
Got it today?
So is that data
The
right
audit.
there? Is that data on this page? Okay. So we can talk offline about all that? Okay.
Okay. What I'll do is, before we get into accepting the entire operating budget as a whole, we'll get to that. There's a few warrant articles that I trust, I believe, and you can, I'll yield to the two of you, the selectmen have already voted on, that we do need to go through the formality of at least putting it on the table and seeing how the Budget Committee weighs in. The first one is the $275,000 bond for the repair and renovation to Whipple Hall. That's a new bond. It'll be a warrant article. Unless someone needs me to, I will not read the proposed warrant article. We all understand that it's a brand new funding of $275,000. So, I don't know if we...
Joe, I could tell you the selectmen voted unanimously to put this on the ballot.
So there was a 3-0 vote there. So there will need, go ahead, Lindsay, you got a question? Didn't we vote on this our last meeting? I don't think we voted to go on the record on the 275.
Right, you need to now vote. Do you recommend it or you don't?
It's either, so when the warrant is printed, the articles will each carry a recommendation on how the
Copy. No, I thought,
selectmen have voted, and then how the Budget Committee has voted. So the selectmen on this particular bond for 275 have voted 3-0. So I'll make a motion to, I don't even know that it requires a motion, but to recommend approving the $275,000 bond for the repair of, let me get my glasses back on, for the renovations and repairs at Whipple and Bucher Building. We've got a second?
to be clear,
Yes.
we're approving turning it over as a warrant article. This is not necessarily our approval as the Budget Committee for this dollar amount.
Yes, you're recommending to the voters that the Budget Committee recommends passage of this warrant article for $275,000.
Yes, we are recommending the 275.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
That we're not just approving that it go to vote with the,
We're approving that it goes to vote in this dollar amount. It's the, no.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. And a second. All those in favor? Aye, opposed? Okay. I think we had... Let's take a hand count. All those in favor, raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? So it's a 7-2. The Budget Committee supports that warrant article. The next one, again, I won't get into the details. Kim has already gotten into the details on the $300,000 bond for the generator, for the wastewater pump standby generator. There will be loan forgiveness on that of $75,000, no interest or principal payments till 2025 in the amount of $300,000. Bill, can you tell us?
3-0.
So the selectmen voted to put that on the warrant article, to put that on the warrant in that amount. So I'll make a motion to approve the $300,000. And we have a second. And all those in favor? And opposed? Unanimous vote, okay. The next one, I'm going to move up, and I don't know if you're all following this one, petitioned warrant articles. We now have a petitioned warrant article for $275,000 to purchase a 7-acre parcel of the Bewley land. That was dealt with earlier tonight and carried a 2-to-1 vote that the selectmen approved to put that on the warrant.
Joe, it's 375.
375. Okay.
Joe?
Are we saying this exactly right? Are we approving this, or are they approving it? They're recommending it, I believe.
Your vote is to recommend it,
Yes.
right?
Thank you.
And so the selectmen will see, the voters will see whether the selectmen recommend this and whether the Budget Committee recommended and what their votes were. I believe those votes show up on the articles, not just a yes or a no. So it's a $375,000 bond to purchase the Bewley land. I'll make the motion. Second. And we have a second. Any conversation? Because it's a new one we haven't heard before.
So the seller is amenable to waiting for this warrant article to be voted upon? Or?
The answer is we don't know, Lindsay, because as you followed the history here, the selectmen withdrew the article from the warrant when the appraisal did not come in at close to the value that we had negotiated, which negated the agreement that we were about to sign because it required that we have an appraisal at or near the value. And the selectmen's meeting earlier this evening, the issue came up as to whether or not we would have a new agreement with the buyer, and I think the conclusion, the statement that was made was We will not at this point, but we would be happy to have the buyer come to the town meeting and support that, but he is free at this point to do what he wants to do, and he has claimed that he has another buyer. So this is a petitioned article, so the selectmen have no say in either the format of the article or where we now stand.
Okay, and this concludes our lesson on free market in real estate? Okay.
Other comments, questions? Colin?
I just, as a comment, I think the town needs to engage here, but I don't think the process that's been used is the right process. And I don't think that we should be paying that much over the assessed value. So for the record, those are the reasons why I'm going to be voting no on this.
And just a comment before I cast my vote is I am very glad that this is going to go. Regardless of how we vote tonight, there will be a warrant article. So I think it's long overdue we decide this. I am opposed to how this process went down. I believe that the taxpayers needed a much more complete presentation here. We went through some work. We had appraisals done. I respect the way one of our selectmen voted tonight to stand the ground to honor a previous vote. So I'll be clear that I'm glad this is going forward, and it will go forward whether our vote, whatever our vote is, but I do not intend to vote in favor of it, and then let it go to the voters.
I'm sorry, could you please explain what a warrant article is and how that's different from just voting?
I think my response.
Go ahead.
So, we're dealing with a free market real estate, environment where there's a private seller and then the town is interested in purchasing such property or land. And a couple of years ago, maybe 5, I
Okay,
believe.
so Lindsay, I'm not sure, is that addressing your question? You want to know really not
No,
about...
I'm getting to it though. Hold on. So previously, we had proposed a warrant article that would approve the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend up to a certain dollar amount, I believe it was $500,000, to purchase land within New London proper to be used for open, and that was the problem probably, but open government use or town use. And the taxpayers said, no, we need more specific usage and or understanding of what that is going to be utilized for. And again, this is where I'm trying to point out that it is a free market. You have a seller who has open opportunity, and then he can just wait and or wait for the discussions and then tell this isn't how any other real estate transaction would occur, because we don't have that, basically that propensity to haggle and or do anything else as a town entity under the way that we are set up.
So I'm sorry, I'm still not clear. A warrant article is what? And
Okay.
it doesn't go to a town vote, or it's still...
No, it does, it will go to town. Every article on our warrant, and the warrant is just a compilation of a number of articles, and you'll see those articles in your town report here in New Hampshire. An article, there'll be a separate article for the bonding of the repairs here. We all get to vote on that. There'll be another article on, we'll compile a segment of our operating budget that says, will you as voters approve this $1.5 million expenditure? So we'll go through each and every article. So this article will appear. This is not a vote whether this gets on there. We're glad it's going to be on there. It will be there. So you will get to vote.
So I think I was confused when you said this is going to go. It sounded to me like it was the vote was final, but then when you said it's going to go to a town vote.
It will go to a town vote. We're glad for that, and this is just simply to say, we already know the selectmen have voted 2-1 to recommend this, So now we have to stand and say, at what level will the Budget Committee recommend this? Because voters will look to that.
I think the comment I'd like to make is a few years ago, there was some property near the elementary school that I don't believe we showed leadership and we let that go. Now there's property across the street from Hannaford's. It seems like an excellent piece of property. I really hope this town shows leadership. I really hope we purchase this land. I really hope we get a new police department, new building. Excuse me, not a department, but a building. So I'm very much in favor of this.
Okay, so we're simply voting whether to recommend this. So all those in favor of recommending that this be placed, or recommending this to the voters, raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, opposed? So it's recommended on a 5-4 basis. So it carries a majority, which is great. Okay, so moving on, I think there may only be one other item, Kim. Is it the $12,000?
You have the 50,000 for...
Oh, that's right. I'm going to skip over fire department radios. That's all come in the budget. We're passing over dump trucks. So there's a $50,000 item that, was it last Monday, Friday? Last week. One day.
This week, it feels like it was this
I
week.
know there's been a lot of meetings.
Monday?
So there's $50,000, do we have a separate article, a draft one already written on that?
Yep, you can read it.
Just to be clear what the use of it's going to be for. And again, while I'm looking for this, I believe the selectmen have voted to recommend this 3-0? Okay.
Want me to read it, Joe? To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for expenditures related to developing a plan for a new police facility at an identified site. Expenditures could include engineering, concept design, survey, environmental testing, project cost estimating, among other building and site investigations.
Okay,
I have a question.
fire away.
So this is different than all the studies that we've done with the existing police facility. Is that correct? Like, this is a totally separate thing from all the studies and all the research that we've done on the existing?
We have never done any investigation of any site.
Of any new site?
We've done Bucher, yes, but not of any new site.
Right. And in order to move forward, we would need to do that investigation.
We did have access to work that the current owner of the Bewley property did for other purposes in assessing that property, but it was not something we asked for ourselves. That was part of our agreement with the seller, and he provided that even though he's not gotten any compensation for it.
So just to be super, super clear, to build a new building for the police,
Yes.
we need to do this study that costs $50,000.
That's the estimated cost to do enough work to bring it to town meeting for a vote.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to add a couple comments, if I might.
Go ahead.
So, back in 2018, the Harriman Report actually performed a study and designed a police station next door. So we've done it as a new building somewhere, and we've got a general design for a police station that's different than the one we have today. We did another study that looked at the existing police station and determined how that could be used and would it meet the requirements of the police department as specified by the police department. we are now talking about relocating the police station somewhere off of this property line, and there's a desire to perform additional studies that you would need to do, to Bill's point, environmental studies, engineering studies, all those matters. And you would also need to, at some point in time, design that building. And design, by definition, goes through multiple iterations. So I hope that clarifies everything you have. So my comment on the 50,000 is, back to the process. It just isn't the right process. You ought to have in front of the towns, the taxpayer, the full cost of what you're attempting to do, the full plan, and the full tax impact before you pull the trigger. And if you do things incrementally, it's sort of death by 1,000 cuts. In my opinion, the taxpayer should have a full view of the total tax impact of the total project, and that's what should be voted on. So for that reason, I'll be voting against that.
Excuse me, Colin, would you tell me how you would get that information? The full package of full cost, including bidding packages and so on, how would you get that without spending any money?
You can spend the money, but the point is, Bill, the select board came up with the 50,000 before the 375,000 case that came up tonight. So my point is that you can't, in my opinion, you can't engineer a facility unless you know where you're putting it. So unless the select board knew something in advance about that 375, which you did not, you were proposing to spend money on something that we don't have any site to spend it on.
So just to pursue this argument for a minute, because it's fairly important, suppose the 375 had not come back for the article, the petition, because we did not know that when we
Correct.
asked to add a 50,000 here. And suppose sometime next spring, in May, say, another site was identified as possible place for a police facility. How would you propose that we bring that forward to the town with no money to do any work to determine what the feasibility of the site was?
You would play that out with the town. I mean, you can lay out the plan and go to the town with the total cost. My point, Bill, is that you can, and if you look at attachment E of the police station site review subcommittee, they had listed 10 or 15 different items that you could do an analysis and lay out for the taxpayer what those costs would be. All I'm suggesting is that you should be bringing to the taxpayer the full scope of cost and taxpayer impact. And if you did that, I would say, yes, you should spend that money.
Well, how would you propose that we bring forward that full package of information without spending any money?
Have the experts in your town help you, Bill.
Oh, all volunteers?
You got rid of them.
Okay, let's, we've got other people who have got comments, and Mark?
I guess my other comment is, if we're interested in getting air conditioning for this building and willing to spend money on air conditioning for this building, I would rather spend that money to move the ball down the field to get a new police building for our police. I mean, period. Like, it blows my mind. I'm sorry. It's very frustrating.
All right. Again, this is a separate article. Bob, to your question, this is a separate article. It's mutually exclusive of whatever happens to the other article. So. Can I make a comment? Sure.
Again, Bob Lyons speaking. Again, I'm coming into this a little bit blind, but if this is going to go before the town in terms of a vote, which I think it will.
It will.
Right, it will. I think it would behoove the town to put some information out to the voters as to why we need a new police station. Again, I've been living here for 4 years. I see people speaking very passionately about why we need one. I see other people questioning it. I personally have no feel for it whatsoever. I couldn't honestly give you an opinion. I have no feel for it. So if you're looking to make a vote and maybe get it passed, I think it would behoove this organization, the town, to provide some background. Why do we plan on spending, let's be real, it's going to be $2, $3, $4 million by the time we're done, somewhere in that ballpark. What are the impact on taxes? Why, he's saying even higher, maybe higher than that. And it may be the right thing. I just don't know because I have no background as to why anybody even thought of moving the police station. I just don't know, except that it's a real small, I've gone in there, it's a real small room. I've never been in the building. So that would be my suggestion, to make the vote for the townspeople that much easier. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that, and I trust we will have many people speaking to why we're at where we're at. I hope so. Again, this is a separate request for $50,000. It will be in the overall budget under capital outlays, and it is clear that it's for the expenditure for any site that may be identified. Currently, obviously, there's one site on the table. Should that fail, this $50,000 could be spent. So let's put it on the table, $50,000. Selectmen have voted, I believe, 3-0. And all those in favor of supporting this, raise your hands. 4, 5, 6. And opposed? Okay, 7-3. 6-3. I'm adding up to 10. There's one missing. All right, at this point, I think those were the housekeeping items that we had to get a vote on. So I think what we'll do at this point is go to the general operating budget. I don't know that, unless there's significant questions or specific questions, we're probably at a point in the process. It's already been explained by Kim, that we're showing the general operating budget up 8.7% from 7.8 million to almost 5 million. The transfers to capital reserves have been almost halved, with a total budget that we'll be voting on. Kim, are we at the point where we're in signing that we've got to go to specific numbers now? Do you want us, or is there an outstanding sewer one we have to vote on?
Nope. You voted on the sewer already? The sewer bond issue was the one that you had to vote on. You already did that.
So I'm at a point where I'm at discussing general operating budget. Any questions on an operating budget that anyone may have? Phil?
This one's on me. I did some looking at the tax cards for the town buildings and just worked my way down from the large to the small. I couldn't find the budget for Tracy Library. That's carefully hidden on somebody's website someplace. But the town has something north of 60,000 square feet of real estate buildings. There's a rule of thumb in the outer world that, you might want to think about 10% of the value of your house every year for maintenance. You can quibble with that number. Many of us don't spend that much. The PD building is estimated at 450,000 square feet. I'll use a number of 300 because many of our town buildings are truck garages and places that certainly are less money than the density of a PD. But that comes up to $18 million of value. Quibble all you want with the number. 10% of that is $1.8 million. So I went through the line-by-line budget for each building, again, just looking at the larger ones, and this town is budgeting $31,500 for repairs and maintenance for all of their buildings together. That's less than 1%. Push these numbers any way you want. Then to cut the capital reserves in half, not all of that is building, but a lot of it is, I think we're getting way, 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 way behind the curve. We got surprised with a new roof on the fire department. We just got a quick and dirty, somebody flew a drone over Whipple and came up with $200,000 worth of repairs there. I don't know when we're going to get tired of getting surprised by this stuff. I would recommend strongly that somehow or another, somebody find $40,000. And the purpose for that would be to get Bob Harrington's folks a computer program that can record predictive maintenance so we can do a study. The rest of that would be to populate that study, get somebody in to look at these buildings and start to plan this stuff out in a predictable manner. We're not going to catch it all, but we know when roofs are going to wear out if we look at them ahead of time. We know when boilers are going to wear out, and we know an awful lot about brick walls and why you have to repoint them before somebody says, gee, there's a brick falling out of the chimney that's going to hurt somebody. So I really would recommend that in this $11 million somewhere, somebody find the money to fund Bob Harrington a preventive maintenance, a predictive maintenance, a capital asset maintenance plan, and start to make an effort to get ahead of this curve, and then realize this thing is so underfunded it's a joke. It really is just nonsense to be down at that kind of number for 60,000 square feet of space. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
So what is the procedure that we would take to entertain Phil's comment?
Well, I think at this point we can discuss it, find out if there's, number one, have we identified, I know when we had a Building and Facilities Committee, one of the things we were focused on was the exact program that Phil was speaking about. You know, whether we've identified that type of software or ability to keep that kind of information, and I think we have identified it, and whether there's an ability to draw funds from unassigned fund balances without changing the budget at the 11th hour, or whether we entertain a change right now. I mean, this is the time to do it. So I'm open to some ideas and conversation.
The unassigned fund balance is $2+ million. And my math is different, but it's close enough. It's $2+ million. So it is the highest it's been ever, according to the sheet. So arguably, if we believe strongly that we want to be proactive in our building maintenance and asset management, is that an investment that's worth our while?
So it does beg the question, and this is my comment, I'm not just, we would have to redo some numbers. It likely could be handled the same way we just handled as a capital outlay of $50,000 for this study, all right? If we had it as an item in that category on the expense side, and on the revenue side, as we did with the $12,000 come from the unassigned balance, it would be a wash and not really have an impact, correct? Am I thinking that through correctly? I mean, for the DRA, we'd have to show it on both sides, but essentially the net effect would be zero.
Correct, but I don't believe that the Budget Committee can use the unassigned fund balance. I mean, you guys prepare the budget, and then the selectmen are the ones that deal with unassigned fund balance. They have already decided to use $12,000 for the waste reduction program. Some years ago, they used $7,000 for the park and ride, unreserved fund balance. They will also use some fund balance to lower the tax rate come in October. I would suggest that if Budget Committee members feel like they should use more of it, that's the time when you can sit there with the selectmen and say, hey, we think you should use more than you're using. But right now, what I think tonight you can do, if you agree with Phil, is increase your budget, your operating budget by $40,000 like we have the software for the finance. We could put a new line in that said building software and add $40,000.
As opposed to the selectmen initiating it with a warrant article?
Right, it'll be part of the warrant article for the building and facilities, wherever we put it in there. And then, since you will not agree with the selectmen, they are meeting after your meeting to approve the warrant, and then they would have to agree with this $40,000. If they don't, then they will have the two budgets, one selectman and one budget committee.
Would the select board define from where the money comes during that conversation?
General taxation,
Yeah, like all the other
like
articles.
all the other articles.
Yeah, I would raise and appropriate it.
Right.
You couldn't look at the other options available?
Well, the selectmen could if they wanted to, but what I'm
That's the
saying
question
right
I'm
now for
asking.
your tonight, you folks are going to decide whether you want to include it in the
No, I
operating.
understand.
Okay.
I'm trying to close the loop.
Yeah,
So
well, I
if,
think the selectmen are here, so they hear this conversation, so.
as one of the discussions the selectmen might have, could they have a discussion around how that, they would fund that 40,000?
They could, yes.
And in that conversation, they could entertain the option of using the unassigned fund balance?
Absolutely, yep.
So if they did that, then it would be tax neutral, based on what Joe said.
That's-
Okay,
But if it's not, it would be added to the tax burden.
correct.
Right.
But there's a lot more complicated discussion to be had on the unfunded fund balance, and I would suggest if you're going to go there tonight, that we adjourn this meeting till tomorrow night, when the selectmen have had a chance to discuss it and fill you in on what there is to know. The number may sound big to you, Colin, in terms of the dollars. In percentage terms, we are close to the lower end of the state's recommended fund balance to maintain for spending levels that we have. And certainly, I don't believe I, as a selectman, would want to take money that we might use to reduce taxation next year to fund another study at this point, when throughout this budget process, we've tried to be lean and mean this year in terms of things we were willing to fund. We had extensive discussion about the need to deal with a number of these subjects in the new year, but this year to add $40,000 to the taxation for this would seem to me to be imprudent, given many of the other things that we've decided not to do this year.
So respectfully, I think that what Phil has outlined as the major asset base of the town, it's more prudent for us to take care of it. It is the major asset of the town.
I would argue with you that our employees are the major assets of this town.
Thank you. I would say physical asset.
So, I mean, the conversation is still on the floor. I don't know if there's other thoughts on adding 40,000. I think if we decide that, you can recommend what account we're putting that in. Any other thoughts on this? There hasn't been a motion. So moved what? We would need a very specific motion. Not just so moved.
I'll take a shot at it. I move that we provide $40,000 to account for asset management software system so that town can manage its building and facilities assets more effectively.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions?
I just want to make sure we're clear here. Was it 40 or 50,000? I just want to make sure if we're
40.
going to vote. It is 40.
It's 40.
Okay.
John?
My only concern here is, we got a lot of softwares out here now. And one of the things that's been bugging me over the years is that we have so many that are not integrated at all. I don't know if in this case, if we got into an integrated package, whether or not there would be one that would incorporate what Phil is talking about. So I'm hoping this year that we do look into it. Bill Helm has mentioned it and so forth, to see that we see if we can't consolidate or integrate our software here a little more. I think I'm all in favor of what Phil's talking about, but I don't want to go buy something and then find out that it could be included in a package that could be an improvement for the town overall.
Phil, can I ask you if there is a specific software that we've identified?
Bob, don't let me put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong. Bob has looked at a number of software, had people in. A couple of us were trying to just help him look over his shoulder a little bit. That fell apart over the holidays for a number of reasons, and we're looking to pick that back up now. Personally, the software in my mind is the secondary issue. For 5 or 10 or 20 buildings, you could do this on a spreadsheet if you had to. So I agree with John. There needs to be a view of the town's software. Bob did look at whether the asset management for the sewer program could be, modularized into buildings, and that proved to be no, right? That's not practical. So the software for this is not all that complicated, and if it turns into something where the town ought to wait to buy the big software, I would do the study, put it on a spreadsheet, and then load it into the right program later, because it's not that complicated. It just needs to be done.
You wanted software, is that correct? And what was the outcome of that request?
It was approved by the Select Board and Budget Committee for budget software.
Great.
And that does include capital improvements, but it's not going to track repairs for facilities.
My question, why was that not put in the budget when the budget was submitted? And now we're looking at it right now as a, sort of a surprise, because frankly, I know I'd like to know more about the software package and what it does. And of course, we all have that same question, whether it can be integrated with either Microsoft Windows or anything like that would be sufficient for not only Public Works, but other departments that may wish to use that type of software.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it wasn't put in the budget from my perspective as an outsider, not a town employee, was that we tried to get this thing going early in the fall, and then it got bogged down. Some of us were out of town. There were just a number of reasons that it didn't get moved forward. So my hope tonight is that we're not standing here next year with some other $200,000 repair that we didn't know was coming, and on it goes, still talking about getting going. Again, the important part of this is the study. The software is secondary. And I agree with everybody. We ought to get the software right so we don't go down the wrong road. But again, if we have to put it on a spreadsheet temporarily, that's very doable.
So Phil, are you, if you think it can be done in spreadsheets, then should we just retract the 40,000? And then the question is I guess how you create a priority around that within the organization to get the work done?
Well, again, I mean, in my mind, it's something like 10,000 for the software and 30,000 for the people to come do the survey. I don't know whether it's 20 or 30 or whether it's 8 or 10. It's as accurate as the engineering on a new police station site.
Yep.
So it's a nice round number.
Yep.
I think if nothing else, at least Phil has raised the awareness tonight that this has got to be a priority. We had these ongoing meetings, and I know things get in the way, the holidays, and things get lost. So I think I am less inclined now to approve the $40,000 in this year's budget, but ensure, that we're getting focused on whether we're starting in spreadsheets and we start paying attention to the assets in this town, so we can appropriately plan funds for things that are going to come up, roofs, heating systems, and things like that. So I'm less inclined to try to put 40,000 into the budget right now. That said, I think we can move the question. Sure. So there is a motion, so we have to, and a second. Unless you want to withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. All right.
But I want to say thanks to Phil in the conversation. It was a good one.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on. Any other questions about operating budgets or comments? sewer operating budgets and transfers, we just need to vote on that. We're going to vote on the whole budget here, I'm assuming at this point. And then, I think we're at the point to vote on the budget. Any other questions? How do you want us to go about this? As far as a total number?
How would you like it? We could either read each individual line you see. You can do the bottom line.
I think we've been through it enough times that we're probably okay with just going to the bottom number. So we're looking at the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget in the total amount, and you want me to put the 11 million number out there, $11,928,700. Okay? We have to take a vote on that. All those in favor of moving that budget number forward, raise your hands. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and opposed, so it's 8-1. All right. We're beyond the point of discussing revenues. Some housekeeping items, minutes.
Talk about revenues. You have,
We have to vote on the revenue side. Now, the numbers I've picked up, those have changed from what we picked up earlier yesterday?
Yeah, because I've put in the,
issue.
the bond issue.
bond issue
Thank
for
you.
the warrant
So
article.
I don't have the up-to-date revenue numbers on that. Kim, if you can give us those numbers, we can vote on those.
Bottom line now?
Because those
Yeah.
changed today.
You want me to just bottom line it, or,
Yeah.
okay.
Or is there, yes, bottom line, it is fine.
Oh, why do I feel like that number's not right? That number, right? Is that what you have? Yep. Okay. So it's, revenue is $5,001,032.
Okay. All those in favor of recommending that number, raise your hands. Those are revenues? Okay. 9-0. All right. Moving beyond the budget now, we're just going to go to, we have a couple of meeting minutes that we have got to deal with quickly. The meeting minutes of, this is printed wrong, not February 4th, January 4th. January 4th. Is that correct? This one sheet says the minutes are from January and January 11th, right?
Right.
Because the agenda was talking about February. So January 4th, do I have any amendments or changes or comments on the minutes from January 4th? Second, all those in favor? Opposed? We're good, 9-0. And then the minutes from January 11th. Any changes or comments? All those in, we have a motion to accept them as printed? Second? We have a second? Second, okay. All those in favor? Aye, okay. That's 9-0. There any other questions or comments before we close tonight?
I have a housekeeping. Are we meeting, does the Budget Committee meet again? Are we done?
I think after tonight, we are done. The Budget Committee does not meet again. I think we need to stay behind and sign the paperwork that's got to go to the DRA. So we'll take care of that right now.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Bill, I know we've talked a lot about the Select Board looking at the structural issues. You know, it's the dispatch cost sharing formula. the software, vehicle equipment repair, reserve accounts.
Yep.
So do you have any insight as to how you see the select board, and it may be rhetorical because you haven't talked to the select board yet, on how they do that, and most importantly, how the select board would engage the budget committee in those conversations?
I don't, as you say, we obviously haven't talked about it. We're going to have a change in membership on the select board. So I would think at one of our first meetings after town meeting, the then new select board would take up its agenda and work on that. And I'm certainly going to recommend, because I've been promoting it for months now, that we do have some workshops that include
Whomever, I suppose, right?
whoever's on the two different boards and wants to participate. But no, obviously, until we get through the town meeting and have the reconstitution of the two boards, we are where we are.
Okay. And Kim, are we still
I've got a nice long list that I'd be happy to go over with you.
I would like to do that, actually. Yeah, that'd be good.
Let's do it, okay.
Okay, good.
Your coffee or mine?
Yeah. Either or, I'm good. The wage study, are we still planning on doing that before the spring?
We'll send it out in the spring.
Have we picked a vendor?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Budget Committee? And the public? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, we do have one here. Very good. Jamie.
Hi, this is Jamie S. from the Energy Committee. And, thank you. And I haven't heard any discussion of what the transfers to the capital reserves are for this budget. I just see one lump sum. Has that been discussed at an earlier date?
Yes, it was. And if you've got a specific question, we can look it up for you right now.
Okay.
We've got the breakdown, what's getting reserved. I believe I have those, or you've got them.
Yeah, so my question relates to the Energy Conservation Capital Reserve Fund, because the Energy Committee and the Budget Committee had an agreement dating back to 2019 that we would be putting aside a set amount of money each year for 6 years in order to fund the purchase of our municipal solar arrays, which are currently owned by a group of outside investors, and we would like to purchase those arrays at the earliest opportunity so that we can begin to get our electricity for free instead of paying the investors for it. So I just wanted to make sure that we're on track to be able to make that purchase at the beginning of the year, calendar year 2026.
As I look at the proposed capital reserve fund activity, there is a $15,000 going into the energy projects this year, which will bring us to a total of $135,171.
Okay, so that means instead of putting in $30,000 like we've been doing, we're only putting in $15,000, which will leave us a shortfall of $15,000. And my only concern is that when we do receive the option to buy the system, we only get an option to buy once every 5 years. And if there are insufficient funds at the time that option to buy is afforded to us, we might have to wait an additional 5 years before we get a chance to buy them again. And I just wanted to make sure the Budget Committee was aware of that fact.
I think we were. I know that I've been following it, and again, just like as was pointed out, that in some level we have kicked the can down the road a little bit. There may need to be a catch-up in the next 2 years of overfunding in another direction. But the decision by the Selectmen and the Budget Committee was to fund it at this level this year, at this time.
Okay, well, as long as we're willing to consider a catch-up in a future year between now and 2026, I think that is totally acceptable.
Do we have a definitive buyout number?
Well, unfortunately, IRS regulations prohibit that. They require a fair market value assessment at the time of the option to buy. So we just have our best guess based on the sales price of other similar solar arrays in the past.
Okay. So Jamie, I would, because we talked a little bit about this, all the reserve accounts, and I think one of the things that Bill talked about is looking at the reserve accounts. And I made a comment that when I went to the school board deliberative session, they actually have targets for the reserve accounts. So I think it'd be worthwhile, as part of that exercise, is to build those targets. And in your case, we're going to need that target, a year in advance of the capability, because even if we put in 30,000, it might still be 100,000 short, right? We don't know, is the point, right? So the point is that
Precisely,
as we get
yes.
closer, we're going to have to correlate with that budget cycle what your analysis is, and hope that we're close enough to do that buyout.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Yeah, we need to have that on our radar screen prior to January 2026 when we get the option to buy. Absolutely. Thanks, Colin. So that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, thank you.
Is the green on?
My name is Karen Epstein, and I live in the town, so I appreciate all the hard work all of you have been doing and continue to do. And I guess I just want to pick up on something that I just heard, just for clarification. So I heard getting our electricity for free, when I think what I heard is it requires a major capital outlay and expenditure. So it's a trade-off as an expense versus a capital investment, correct? I'm just trying to clarify, so it's not free, it requires us to purchase something.
That is correct.
Yes.
Just wanted that to be clarified.
And I think that, I'll speak for Jamie, and Jamie, you can, I think when he comes to the town, he'll probably do an analysis that says, if you make this upfront investment, your cost savings would be X, and your payback is over X number of years.
Great,
Right?
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lindsay, did you have? No. You got it? Okay. Anything else? I entertain a motion to adjourn, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you all for coming out tonight. Yes, Budget Committee, do not leave till you sign.